The World Bank is now predicting that the global economy will go through its slowest growth phase since the 1960s. Now, the World Bank is a Washington, D.C. based institution, and the reason why it's saying that the global economy will go through its weakest period of growth in decades is primarily due to Donald Trump's tariff policies. Now, what I'm going to do in this video is go over all the numbers and give you my opinions. So, as always, my name is Derek, and I got my degree in finance, so you don't have to. Let's dive right into it. So, first and foremost, not only did the World Bank cut its expectations for the decade, it also cut its expectations for this year. So, for the global economy, it cut its expectations from 2.7% growth this year down to 2.3% growth. And for the United States, it was even worse. It cut its expectations from 2.3% growth for the year down to 1.4%, signifying that not only is the global economy going to experience a slower growth period because of these tariffs, but that, again, as we have said on this channel, as well as other economists and finance professionals, that the United States will experience the brunt of this because the United States is the one implementing the tariffs through Donald Trump. So first, let's go over the cause, and then I will give you my opinions, because while I do think that there is some merit to the World Bank's expectations, I also think that in reality, it's probably not going to be as bad, to be honest. So there's a glimmer of hope. So first and foremost, the main reason or catalyst for this is because of Donald Trump's tariff policies. As we've talked about many times on this channel, Donald Trump started this volley of fire when it comes to tariffs with tariffs on Canada and Mexico. This was very much at the beginning of his presidency. 25% on Canada, 25% on Mexico, but those were quickly basically paused. Then he went on to do what he considered reciprocal tariffs, which, in my opinion, weren't actually reciprocal tariffs because they were not based on what other countries charge us. So a true reciprocal tariff would be if Mexico charges us 10% on our shoes, that we import into their country, then we would charge them a 10% tariff on their shoes that they import into our country. That's not what happened. Trump's reciprocal tariffs were more so based on the trade deficit with these countries. So basically, he figured out what percentage of trade deficit we had with these countries and then based the tariff on that. That has nothing to do with reciprocal tariffs. And in fact, we ended up tariffing some countries that we had a trade surplus with. I believe a couple of those examples were Australia and Singapore. So those were that's kind of what caused this major contraction in the stock market. People started calling for recession odds, which I do want to mention. The World Bank does not believe that we are at risk for a global recession. The point is, that's what caused all this. Now, Trump did also add 100+% tariffs on China during this whole debacle. Now, basically, all of those tariffs have been curtailed back. There's been a 90-day pause on the reciprocal tariffs, except for the base 10% tariff. So we still do have a tariff on everybody. And then China has a 10% tariff plus 30%, which is the base 10% tariff that we're charging everybody, plus an additional 20% tariff meant to fight fentanyl. Okay, so that is the main reason why the World Bank thinks that the global economy is going to go through a very slow period of growth. Now, let me give you my opinions as to why I think the World Bank is correct in its assumption, but it'll probably be less than they expect. And the primary reason for that is that, one, the economy still in the United States is looking very strong, even in light of these tariffs. Now, yes, I've made videos in the past on this channel about how the tariffs have not truly hit our markets yet because of the supply that we currently have. Companies have to run through supply and inventory at cheaper rates before we experience those higher prices. Regardless, the economy is remaining strong and consumers are remaining resilient, and there's a couple of other things that are very important. One, European central banks are already cutting their rates because they are forecasting that inflation will be at or below their target rate very soon. Now, the United States, the Federal Reserve, led by Jerome Powell, has yet to cut rates or continue to cut rates. But I do think that a rate cut is coming, or should, in the next few meetings. Now, the most likely outcome for the most recent meeting, which is in like a week, is that there will not be a rate cut. That is already priced in. Okay, so the economy is relatively strong. Now let's talk about the tariffs, because while the tariffs have been implemented to a degree, they have not been implemented to their full effect. Basically, every single one of Donald Trump's tariff policies have either been paused, have been curtailed back, or have been challenged in court to see if they even have legal standing. And some courts have sided with their challengers that Trump doesn't have legal standing to implement them at the degree that he is. So what I am seeing is, yes, we have an elevated risk of both recession on a global scale as well as in the United States, and we have an elevated risk for slower growth than otherwise would be because of these tariffs. But at the same time, I think that what we're going to see in the coming 5 to 6 months is that most of these tariffs are going to be permanently walked back. Now, Trump does a great job at controlling media attention and also at riling up his base. Now, this is a little bit more politics than it is economics or finance, but the fact of the matter is a lot of these tariffs were political posturing. They were classic political posturing to basically hit the ground running as his new presidency started. But just like we saw in 2018 with his steel and aluminum tariffs, we saw those tariffs get exemptions or get walked back, and even in their form, they did cause havoc. When you look at the net jobs created, it was a net job loss because, yes, it did protect the steel and aluminum industry, but downstream, other companies that rely on steel and aluminum had to cut costs due to the higher prices, and they did so by laying off employees. So even though these tariffs, I think, are going to be a lot weaker than he says they are, or they might be canceled or paused permanently, or there's going to be a ton of exemptions for these tariffs, yes, it still does increase the risk of slower growth. It also does increase the risk of recession. But just a few months ago, Jamie Dimon, he was saying that he was calling basically for a recession, and that a recession would be the best possible outcome for the economy. That very clearly has not been the case, and I think that every day that we go without a recession, it's probably a lesser chance that it's going to actually happen. Now, could it still happen? Yes. None of us have magic 8 balls. We can't read the future. But I do think that the economy is in a decent spot. I do think that we're going to have positive GDP growth, both in the United States as well as in a global scale, but it is most likely going to be weaker than it otherwise would have been. But I do think going into 26, 27, 28, 29, I think a lot of these tariff issues are going to be ironed out. I think there's going to be trade agreements redone, or I think the majority of them are going to end up being just political posturing or some form of negotiation tactic. So with that said, I hope you found this video informative. If you did, please consider subscribing. It helps out the channel tremendously. Let me know how you like this more casual, layback style of video. Usually, they're very structured, they're edited, they're cut. I probably only need to cut this video a couple times. But if you like this layback style, let me know. I'll still obviously put charts, graphs, articles, everything needed to support this video. But yeah, let me know. If you like personal finance, world economics, and investing, you are in the right place. So I hope to see you around for the next video. With that said, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.